G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. I'm Noddy, and with this year's main co-host Chris overseas for work, I'm joined by 2021's regular co-host Stevo. G'day, Stevo. How you been, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here. I finally got on for a run, round 10. So I've been sitting on the bench for a while, so keen to come and have a chat.
That's dedication. I don't know who's got the most Medi-subs this year, but you'd have to be up there for sure. In this episode, number 39, we'll be reviewing the round 10 game against the Blues and also have a quick chat about the upcoming Tigers game too. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. Last Friday night, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the Carlton Blues by 15 points, with us scoring 13-9-87 to their 15-12-102. All right, Stevo, first impressions. What do you think of that, mate?
I was disappointed on it. I mean, I was kind of hopeful that we could reassert a bit of dominance and show that, yep, we're a top four team this year. But then, you know, watching that first quarter, the way that they were walking the ball out of our forward line in that first quarter made me think this could be a bit of a long day. You know, in that first half, we're constantly second of the ball. You know, they were scoring more inside 50s, winning a lot more of the footy, and really just our accuracy kept us in the game in that first quarter. It's the only reason we were ahead at quarter time. And they blew us off the park, kicking, I think, 5 straight, smashed in clearances, inside 50s, contested possessions, and they got on a good run. They kicked 9 goals in the quarter, and that was it. Whatever happened after that didn't matter because you're down by 38 points at halftime.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about halftime, we came out after the main break, obviously produced a better effort, wrestling our way back into the game, essentially like nullifying the contest. Like, I think it was +5 by the end of the second half. So we definitely got it back our way. But it just, I don't know, we just couldn't really convert that into dominance, you know. At least fighting the ball, it got us into a chance to steal the game. Got within 17 points at 3/4 time. You know, surging home, got within 8 points. But then, as you say, like, accuracy let us down in the fourth. We kicked 17%, kicked 1-5 to their 1-3. You know, their young ruck had an amazing fourth quarter, really stymied some of our progress. But, yeah, I just felt a bit numb in that second quarter. Hey, you could see the whole crowd going nuts, and we were just watching like what felt like a bloodbath just in the centre square and then in their forward 50. Wasn't pretty, was it, mate?
And it stung a bit having Georgie Hewitt having one of his best games of the year too. God. He looked good, didn't he? Yeah.
How many Swans fans were thinking, why did we let this guy go again?
I get it.
He's having a career best year, and there's a position for him, I think you're about to say. But
I get why, you know, in terms of the Swans' future, he's not at the Swans, and I'm glad to see him doing well. But it stung that extra little bit.
Yeah, it really did. And you could see there was plenty of niggle there. You see Millsy and Hewitt going at it and, giving each other hell. But I know Hewitt was always it was a favourite of mine, you know. He was always like the kind of guy where, you know, he couldn't really do anything wrong. He always worked really hard. And then, you know, he wasn't one of those players that necessarily got under your skin or whatever. So I don't know. I was always rooting for him. But yeah, to see him in another Guernsey, obviously Nick Newman is there with the Blues as well. But, it sort of hurt a little bit more with Georgie. Hey, mate, key takeaways. What were yours?
And one more thing on George Hewitt, actually. I got to admit, I mean, they were wearing the Indigenous jerseys this week, but just generally, I think he looks like sleeker and meaner in a Blues jumper. Like, something about him. He looks like he means business in a Carlton jumper.
He's got a fancy haircut. That might help.
Yeah.
He's got one of those fades. So I don't know if he was just he hadn't embraced his haircut peak while he was in Sydney. But he does. He's looking good, and good on him. You know, like, obviously wishing the best, and it's just a shame that he's producing that effort against his old club. Yeah. And we're all there going, oh man, Georgie, you're killing us.
I'm stoked for him. Good on him. I'm glad he's doing well.
Yeah, totally, mate.
Yeah, sorry, go on. You asked me something.
No, you're right, mate. I asked you about key takeaways, and I realised I was going to chat about some of the main stats first, but it's pretty simple. It's been spoken about at length. Horse mentioned it in the press conference afterward. It is basically a story of two halves, and it revolves around contested possession. In the first half, we were minus 29. In the second half, we were plus 5. Touched on that earlier. Inside 50s, again, was brutal. First half, we were minus 14. Second half, plus 21. We peppered them in the second half with inside 50s and just really couldn't convert. Tackles was pretty similar. Carlton had more in the second half. Free kicks, we have to talk about it, Stevo. It's one of these main talking points, not just in our game, but this round in general. First half, Carlton had 20 free kicks to our 8. And if there are certain numbers that trigger me, okay, and you know that 20 to 8 is a triggering combination of numbers for me for none other than the 2016 grand final. But look, second half obviously leveled out a little bit. We won that by 1. So just repeating, it was 20 free kicks to 8. Sydney's 8 in the first half, and then Carlton had 12 to Sydney's 13 in the second half. What do? They have a couple of oranges at halftime and just say, "Oh, boys, geez, we let that one go. We better give these Swannies some free kicks here." Come on, you know what happens. What happens? What's going on there?
Look, I'm gonna agree with you in this one. I tend not to. Usually whenever there's a free kick conversation, I tend to be a bit more measured. There were some shockers in that first half, but having said that, a lot of them were also ones that the Swans gave away because they were second of the ball, which was frustrating. And it's not just the Swans game. Like it's been the AFL in general this year. There seems to be less and less clarity around umpiring, and it's frustrating, I think, for a lot of fans and commentators, and I'm sure players and coaches too, that you don't know what's going on because the same thing that was a free kick in the first quarter isn't in the third quarter, and the next week something else. It's getting really frustrating to watch at times, actually, not just the Swans, but when I'm watching other matches. So,
I mean, the big one on your point there from this week was the Warner play and then descent. So Warner runs 10, bounces, runs another, 15, maybe 16, gets pinged for running too far, puts his hands out because he's confused, 50-metre descent. Next kick goes in, Tommy McCartan's holding Curnow, it's a goal, right? And then later, I don't know when it was, but, Cripps is throwing his arms out. There were a lot of arms throwing both ways. That's what I don't get. If they're saying if it's demonstrable descent, i.e. if you put your arms out to the ref at all, then it's going to be 50. Okay, if that's the case, there needs to be about 20 more free kicks a game because there's arms going everywhere after almost every kick, every call. Not every call, but you know what I mean? Like, it's I don't know. It's frustrating.
It's a very frustrating one, and I think the other thing that frustrates me too is that they were talking. I was watching on the couch today the show with Gary Lyon and Revolt and Jonathan Brown, and then they often have John Ralph, the journalist, on there with them as well, and he was saying that his understanding of it is that it's up to the individual umpire. There's no definition of what dissent is. Each individual umpire has to determine what they think dissent is. And this is part of this massive inconsistency. And then they asked for some clarification from the AFL. I think they actually said they'd even invited them on their program and they got nothing back. So no one knows.
Oh, I thought it was clearer than that. I thought it had to be demonstrable. When I was watching Brad Scott bumble his way through all those press conferences maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, it seemed like demonstrable a demonstrable example of dissent. So I guess that's also ambiguous.
Yeah, it's subjective. This is a problem. It's totally so. Like I could be an umpire, and you could be an umpire, and you might be like an umpire with 400 games of experience and not much ruffles your feathers. So you don't care. You don't think that that's in any way dissent, and it's not putting you off or whatever. It's not questioning your authority. So when I shrug my shoulders at you, you think whatever, play on. But then say I'm an umpire with 50 games of experience or whatever, and I feel less secure in my role, or maybe I'm just a person who's a bit more narky, for want of a better word. I think everything's dissent because that's my reaction. And this is like, it's a mess. Come on, fix it, please, AFL. It's just, it doesn't need to be like this.
Yeah, David King, I think, was going to have an aneurysm. He's he can get as passionate as anyone, but I think he's been very passionate on this point. And if you're looking at, and there's a couple of other reasons for it. If the crowd numbers are down, and this is one of the key factors, then they need to move quickly because this is stupid. But I mean, going back to your point, second to the ball, look, halfway through the third, I think counted of the 21 free kicks that we conceded, we had been holding the man on 7 occasions. So, like a third of those, we were second to the ball. So there's definitely that trend there, Steve. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's just hard to watch sometimes, and it's the inconsistency that really, can really ruffle feathers. But in terms of league-wide implications, we're into the season now. We can have a look at a bit of an analysis into how we're going and how the teams we come up against are going. We are currently 6 wins and 4 losses now, sitting on 7th with 120.4%. If I look at what our wins, we've had 1 win against the top 8 team, and that was Geelong on Buddy's big night, which is probably our best game, and maybe they just let us win it. And then the four losses we've had against 2 top 8 teams and 2 middle teams, that, Western Bulldogs will probably be in the top 8 soon, and Gold Coast Suns, you never know if they can knock off a few more. They might even hit the 8. So look, yeah, I think that initial 5-1 or 6-1, no, what were we, 5-1?
Yeah, I think 5-1.
5-1, everyone was going, oh my God, here are the Swans, they're a flag, they're coming home for the flag. That was probably a little premature, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it now, like we all went into the season with high hopes, and I think, at 5-1, we're thinking, yep, top 4 shot. And now the finals is going to be a fight, and we'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. But it's really going to be a fight now where the Swans are at. And if you look at who we've beaten the junk, really. Like, we've beaten GWS, we've beaten North Melbourne, we've beaten West Coast, we've beaten Essendon. Most people are thrashing them. We beat the Hawks. Okay, the Hawks had a good week against Brisbane, but the Hawks are very up and down, and really we beat them on the back of just a really fast run towards the end of the game. They blew us out of the water in the first quarter, and we just fought back in. So the form lines, that's not the form line of a top 4 team, and then 2 losses against teams that are probably going to be top 4, which is Brisbane and Carlton, and then a loss against the Gold Coast, who probably won't make the 8 as much as people would love them to. They probably won't. And the Dogs, who are on the fringe of the 8. So that's it. That's not a good form line, hey?
Let's look at the Blues. So, everyone's up and about with these Blues. And obviously, and I think you've even commented that the AFL's better when a big Melbourne team is up and about. It just sort of feels more vibrant. And I think that's fair. They're 8-2. They're now coming 4th on 114.6%. The teams they've only beaten 2 top 8 teams, Richmond and us. And the rest have been, 4 middle teams, Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Port, and GWS, and then 2 bottom 4 teams, North and the Crows. The 2 losses they've had, you'd sort of scratch your head if you're a Blues fan. They lost to the Suns, as we did, by 30, and that was an away game. And then they lost to the Dockers, which was also away, and that was 35. So, and the Dockers, as we were talking about before we started recording, they looked good, a little bit like us, but they've come off the boil, haven't they, in the last 2 weeks? So, yeah. What do you make of the Blues season to date? Because that's not that impressive. They've probably had more, only 3 top 8 teams that they've played against, and they've won 2 of those, lost 1. So, I don't know. Do you think they're a chance to win the flag this year, Stevo?
Not the flag, I don't think. I reckon they can go deep into finals. I reckon they can finish top 4, and they can win a final or 2 even. The thing with the Blues that I like compared to us is the 8 wins, and we've got 6. Because the only stat that, like, we talk about stats forever. I mean, Australian football delivers piles and piles and piles of stats, but the only ones that ever really matter are wins and losses and draws, I guess. That at the end of the day, that's the number that matters to get you in the finals, is how many wins. They've got 8 already. So they only need to win 5 out of their last 12, and they'll make the finals. They win, say, 7 or 8 out of those 12, and they'll be a top 4 team. And if we look at who they've played, they haven't played some of the bigger sides yet. So they haven't played Melbourne, they haven't played Brisbane, they haven't played Geelong, I don't think, and they also haven't played St Kilda, who were looking pretty good. So I'll make an assessment on the Blues once I've seen how they go against those teams. At the moment, I'm not convinced because, they've won a lot of games, but they've also given up some pretty chunky leads in a lot of their games, and that's not something which I think is going to is going to stand up against Melbourne, Brisbane, these sorts of sides. I think they'll punish you if you give them that much of a chance to get back in the game.
Definitely. And how stressful must it be for the Blues fans to watch them? What a roller coaster. They kick out, they're 40, 50 points up, and then they come home to win by 1, 3, and 15. You know, like in those close games, Hawks, Port, and the Swans. So yeah, talk about risk and reward for being a Blues fan at the moment. But look, that's probably enough on the game, Steve. Well, on the key takeaways. In terms of favourite moments, we'll just shout out a couple. Buddy's long bomb. Oh my God, vintage Buddy. How good was that from the centre square?
It was beautiful, wasn't it? And you could see it building. Sometimes with these Buddy long bomb goals, there's almost a sense of inevitability, and it's like the waters just open up and then whoosh. And that was what that one was. It was great, wasn't it?
And then Warner having to get out of the way very quickly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was particularly impressed with, and I'll touch on him in a moment, Paddy McCartan's kicking. Obviously, he's known for this season he's getting to be known for his intercept marking, but his kicking is very good. And his inside 50 kicking, I think he had a couple, 2 or 3 even. I think they were score involvements because they led to goals. But I was just very impressed with some of his lace-out kicking, not just this week, but in recent weeks as well. How about you, mate? Any favourite moments from the... Yeah.
Totally. I got a couple. And with McCartan, this is what happens when you get someone who was an elite forward when they were drafted, because he was drafted number 1 as the best full forward in the country. 6, 7 years ago? The same year Heaney got drafted. I think he was that same draft. Yeah. And you know, the guy who was the best full forward in the country at age 18 is probably going to be an elite kick, we would hope. And when you put him in the back line, this is what they can do. Like it's he's a beautiful kick. But yeah, so speaking of, if I'll link into other exciting young drafted forwards, Logan McDonald, for me, his game out of a very disappointing day, really, overall, the thing that made me really happy was how well he went. He kicked 3 goals. I think he took 4 marks in the first quarter alone, if I remember, and about 10 overall, I think 8 or 10 for the whole match. I mean, this is still a 20-year-old kid. Has he even turned 20, 19, 20? Like he's very young. And he's really starting to assert himself as an AFL standard player, which, for me, if this whole season ends up being a bust, the emergence of him into a genuine AFL player would be enough to take away and think that was a good year, honestly.
Yeah, he's 20. So, 20, I agree. Like, he looked good. Look, he probably almost could have had a bag by the end of it. He rushed those last 2, but that was for the game to try and get us back in. But in doing so, obviously... just lost some of that run up that we were talking about before.
Yeah, makes me nervous.
Makes you nervous.
Yeah.
Somehow it makes me calm.
Really?
That little dip. Yeah, I'm like, he's got to do the dip. He's dipping because he dips. He kicks it straight. But if he's rushing the dip, that's when the radar's off a bit. That's what I think anyway. Any other moments, mate, before we move on to the Bevies BNF?
There was one that I really liked, actually. It was Colin O'Riordan took a really strong mark on the wing, strong defensive mark, which he hasn't been playing that much this year. He played a little bit last year, and that just reminded us, I guess, just how tough a player he is, because that was a gutsy mark, coming back, full body contact, held on the mark. So that was a little flash of happiness on an otherwise not so happy afternoon. No, night. It was afternoon here in Finland. Sorry, nighttime there.
Yeah, no, we'll probably talk about him later on. But yeah, I think he did everything he could to stay in the team. But we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. All right, up next is the ABOB medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. The Bevies' best bloods this week in 3-2-1 points order were Luke, I can sledge anyone I want, Parker, Tommy Papley and Cal Mills. We've got a couple of honourable mentions after that as well, mate. So do you want to kick us off with Parker there?
He was just tough, I think, Luke Parker. And these 3 players, all of them really, when it's these 3 that are the best, it always worries me a little bit, because it means that, we can't rely on these guns every week to have to do this. They need support. And that was how I kind of felt watching this game. So Parker did what he always does. We get the same thing out of Parker every single week. And, 26 touches, kicked a goal, bunch of tackles, I think 7 tackles, 31 pressure acts, which is massive. I was like second on the field, which is huge. It was a great day from Parker.
Definitely. And I think what happened, like with that clash, and we'll talk about this as well, the clash between Kennedy and Doherty, obviously, Joey had been put in the mid back in the past couple of weeks, and he goes off, and you think, okay, Parks is in there, Mills is in there, and then I think we were dropping like flies at one point. They weren't all mids. I think it was Blakey and someone else, and even Parker himself. I think you were saying like he looked a bit proppy, maybe he'd done an ankle or something. But I thought at one moment that we were going to lose Kennedy and Parker, but obviously he played out the game and went on to have a good one, but couldn't bring us over the line as he so often does. But I thought Tommy Papley was good. And had a pretty, like what you would consider just a top shelf small forward game, even though he had a few centre bounce attendances. 3 goals, 2 behinds, 10 disposals, 23 pressure acts, 6 score involvements, which is probably low for him, but it was second for Sydney. I just thought he had a good game. He's obviously warming back up to the level. His 3rd game back, I think, after his Hemi, and obviously quiet first 1. And 2, but we're seeing vintage Tommy do his thing. Sorry. So, what do you think of his game, mate?
Oh, Papley's great. I think he's one of my favourite players in the whole AFL. Just the way that he goes about it, and his energy level can be a real barometer too. Like if he's a bit flat, the team can appear a bit flat sometimes, but when he's up and about, because there's sorts of players when you're playing that you love having on the field because they just go in everything. They're zipping about. They really get in the opposition and they hit the scoreboard. They don't just buzz around and be a pest. They also cause a whole lot of damage. So, yeah, it was a great game from Papley, but I just think he probably could have had a few more mates out there.
Definitely. And, well, Cal Mills has really been flying the flag all year, and he's had some absolute scorching games. And this is probably comparatively a quiet game for him. But if you look at how it played, 23 disposals, 8 tackles. I mean, he had 13 last week, 13 or 13, I think, which was basically half of what Essendon got as a total for a team. But look, he was best on ground for tackles, 8 tackles, 32 pressure acts, which was also best on ground. So maybe he wasn't as focused on the disposals this game, because we know he can get high 30s, but he seemed to be more on the defensive acts this game. But I guess the thing I want from Millsy is like maybe kicking 1 or 2 goals if he can. I think that would take him to another level, wouldn't it? I mean, I think he deserves to be spoken in the Brownlow discussion at least, or even AA. Sorry, that's All Australian. But he probably isn't. But I don't know. What do you think about him general, and how'd you see him against the Blues, mate?
Oh, again, I mean, the Blues, he's one of these players. He gives you, the same every week. He's an elite footballer. He's a complete AFL footballer. And I think that his ability to combine both winning the football but also using the football really well, plus his sort of defensive pressure side of his game, he's absolutely elite. And I still don't think he gets the applause maybe outside of the Swans that he probably deserves. It's starting to improve now. You're hearing him get talked about a bit more in the football media, but still not as much as someone of his standard probably deserves. But yeah, I mean, it's always hard to know too, like if his role in the midfield is to be more of a defensive holding role and push back and help at the backs where it's coming forward. Because you're right, he hasn't really hit the scoreboard much this year, at least not that I can remember much. He's probably kicked 1 or 2 goals, has he only? Not
it's
that
about
many.
that, I think.
It'd be nice to see him getting his name amongst the goals.
I guess that's the other thing, like with Joey off, and we had to shift a few players around. Obviously, Rowie still had a week off. We got probably not our best midfield out there, and we're coming up against a midfield unit that's playing really well, and they're all pretty big units, right? They got Cripps, Kennedy, Hewitt, Walsh is smaller but runs all day, and Chera. It's a very good midfield. And, if you think about who we've got in there, I think Heaney had a bit of a run through, Papley had a run through. I think maybe even at times Florent and Juzzy obviously were in the mix on the wings. But yeah, look, I mean, it's falling on Millsy's shoulders more and more. But obviously offset with Parker. But if we're not scoring goals, we kind of also need Parker as that other option to go down there, because we know his forward craft is up there with the best. So yeah, look, I don't know. I guess my question is, do we need another type of mid in there? And let's talk about it later when we go on the hot topics. But
I'll go back for a second. Who are those?
Asterisks.
You just listed 5 Carlton midfielders, right? Say them again.
Yep.
Which one?
Cripps, Matt Kennedy, George Hewitt, Adam Chera, Sam Walsh.
Yeah, so Hewitt is probably the 4th out of that lot, you would say, after Cripps, Walsh, Chera. Hewitt is probably next, and then Kennedy. At the Swans, what would it be? If Hewitt was back at the Swans, it would be there'd be Parker, Mills, and Hewitt would be the third in line, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So that's already a class gap you can see there. So their fourth best midfielder would be our third best midfielder. Yeah. So you can already see a bit of a separation between their midfielders and ours.
Mm. And it was just, it was brutal, wasn't it, that second quarter?
Yeah,
but,
it was horrible to watch.
It was like a training run. It was just, we were just getting, and we'll talk about Laddams and Hickey a little bit later on as well. But look, all right, before that, honourable mentions. You got any honourable mentions you want to chat about, mate?
I always say that I like Goulden, and I'm going to say it again because this kid is 19 years old and he just turns up every week and gets his 20-yard kicks and his goal and he's inside 50s. And, he's a very, very good player. And it's ridiculous that he's not even up to game, 30 probably, and we're still expecting just to turn up and see him do it every week. He's a star. I
know, he's almost ruined us, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I love the way that within the same match, these Victorian, I think was it BT? I think he was calling it. I don't know, maybe it wasn't BT, but they can pronounce his name Goulden in one play and Golden in the next. And I just don't understand how it's that difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, look, one of the great miracles of the AFL, really, I think, is that large numbers of the Channel 7 commentary team remain employed. And you just offered another good example.
Goodness. All right, mate. I'll say Paddy. 9 intercept marks, possessions rather, best on ground. 2 inside 50s I touched on earlier, which I just loved. Obviously, he's one of the stories of the AFL. These come back, but he's not just making up the numbers. He's really one of our best players, and I think he's probably one of the best backs in the comp. I thought he was better than Wiedering, but obviously Wiedering did a pretty good job on Buddy. I think Wiedering's ahead of him and a few others in the All-Australian discussion. But, who else do we have there? We had Logan, we've sort of spoken about.
He was great.
And, Ollie Florent, I think probably played okay. Logan again, I think, 3 goals, 3 behinds, best for Sydney, 3 contested marks, game high until Tom de Koning took 4. As he ramped up in that fourth quarter. But what do you think of Ollie's game, mate?
He's pretty solid. And Florent's one of those ones that his role, I guess, is going to determine how we see him. I like Ollie Florent in the midfield. I know that he gets run off half-back. He gets run through a wing a bit, or at least that's what it looks like on the TV. It's quite hard to know, not watching at the ground, exactly where players are playing. But I really like it when he actually gets in to the midfield and he gets to be that sort of that release player coming out of a stoppage. And also he has this, like he's one of these energy players. He's a little bit like Papley in a way that, you look at someone like him and when he's up and about and when he's really going at it and winning the ball and using the ball well, I feel positive about how the team is going around him. So I liked Florent's game.
It's an interesting comment because, the mongrel punt, that fantastic online, I guess, review, whatever it is, they do fantastic reviews of games and stuff. And there was one of the guys there who does the Swans there. He says that when Ollie Florent gets 20 disposals, the Swans win. And so this could be the first time. Yeah.
How many did you get this week? 21.
21.
And we ruined it. It's over.
we ruined it. So we'll have to wait. Maybe they miscounted his disposals. He only got 19.
Yeah.
Because the guy, he had, was looking like one of those really quirky stats that just was true every time you looked at it. But
how does one go about discovering that stat? That's impressive dedication. I think that's wow.
You'd have to really follow the tables, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
you'd have a few cool Excel spreadsheets, I imagine. But
what else you came up with? Like every single time Callum Mills gets 15 contested possessions, the Swans win by 20 points or more. You could probably find all sorts of stuff if you dig.
You heard it here first on the Bevy of Bloods.
Yeah, and that one is not documented. That's just me making one up. But let's see what else I could find.
I wouldn't be surprised though.
But he's a bit of a barometer player.
Yeah, he is. And I don't know. I've often wondered maybe he's the long-term replacement for like your Jake Lloyd or your Cunningham. He goes to a back pocket or something. Obviously, he can kick well. His defense is, it's one of the hardest positions, so it's pretty hard to get a midfielder, say, be a lockdown small defender now. But I don't know. I mean, do you see him sticking around the midfield, or maybe moving around in the next couple of years as we have a proper tilt?
It depends on needs, doesn't it? So if they need a midfielder, then yeah. I mean, Longmire has always shown a willingness to shift players around based on what the team needs. And, I mean, everyone likes playing in the midfield, don't they? Like if you're playing footy, you want to be around the ball.
Yep.
But then, maybe, yeah, especially, I mean, if Lloyd isn't going to Cunningham and they're both about the same age, I think they both got drafted the same year even. So they're not around forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. All right. In terms of coaches' votes, Lukey Parker was the only Swan who received votes, so that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, let's go on to the next topic, which is hot topics. Righto, how do we pull up after the match? MRO, what changes will we make? What's happening in the VFL, et cetera, et cetera. So Joey Kennedy, 1 week for contact on Doherty. Obviously, it was a brutal collision. Obviously, it deserves a week, potentially more. I think his nose was probably broken. He played out the game, so that's positive. So, but in the same action, as we know here, Joey Kennedy's done some serious damage to his hamstring. Sounds like 8 to 10 weeks, but I don't know. At his age, that kind of injury, it's a tough one, isn't it?
That could be him done. I hope not, because he's a much-loved player. I really hope not.
And he's on 289 games as well. I was hoping he made his 300 this year. But,
yeah, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably he could be done 10 weeks. Let's say it is to 10. There's a bye week in there. You're talking about bringing back in a injury recovering player a week or two before finals, if you make them.
Bit dicey.
That player's 30 years plus. It's going to be tough. I mean, I really, really hope he comes back, but I don't know.
He's the kind of clubman who'd say, don't be idiots, don't pick me. But I had a bit of a back and forth with what I call a super fan on one of the socials by the name of Beck Humphrey. I just think she's just a fantastically informed Swans fan, and she was talking about the long-term injury list and how that functions. I had to go back through that 200-page contract that the AFL released and check the details. So that, by the sounds of it, they could put him on the long-term injury list and then elevate someone off our rookie list to take his spot. And technically, if he were fit and able to come back and it was good for the team and we're in the finals and all that sort of stuff, we could submit an application to the AFL, essentially seeking approval for that to happen. So basically, the rookie player would come up, Joey would go down, and then it could be reversed subject to approval. Pretty technical stuff, but I think it's a minimum of 8 weeks. If I'm correct, it was 6 weeks during coronavirus. They might have put it back to the regular 8 weeks. So it's sounding like in terms of time, it's right around the money. It's just whether or not they go down that path, because obviously there's a couple of players who are regulars that are on the rookie list at the moment, and this is all pretty much just technicalities. Or I think Beck Humphrey's point was, do we pick up a middle-ager or someone at the mid-season draft and elevate them immediately from the rookie to the primary list so that they can get in the mix and cover some of that Joey loss? So I thought it was just an interesting concept. I don't know who's up for possible selection in the mid-season draft, but yeah, I don't know. It's a massive loss either way. Obviously, he was playing off the halfback earlier this season, but he's found his spot again in the middle. And to do this way, this close to his 300th, and hopefully the Swans doing well this year is really disappointing, I think, for him and the club. I don't know, mate. What do you think? Rowie comes back in, surely.
You'd think so, yeah. He had a 1 week suspension, didn't he? He'll be back.
Yeah,
straight away.
Yeah. So he'll come back in. That'll probably most likely be the like-for-like Joey replacement. Obviously, Braden Campbell came on for Joey as the Medi sub. He looked amazing straight away. I think he had 11 touches by the time that he'd finished the third quarter or something like that. So look, and we know what he can do with his kick. He was managed. He was dropped and managed and then brought on the medical sub. Obviously, Colin O'Riordan got that start ahead of Gould, and off the back of really good form in the VFL as well. And you've already spoken about Cole tonight. I thought he played very well, very solidly, did his role. Do you see him potentially coming out if they choose to go with Campbell and Rowie?
It depends what they want, doesn't it? I mean, if they want a guy like O'Riordan who is solid and can do a job, we're just guessing from the outside, aren't we? I like Campbell in the team. I think it's important to have guys like him in there. Richmond is going to be without Lint, so their forward line is going to look a bit different. Maybe they can get away without having an O'Riordan. And yeah, I'd like to see Campbell in the team because he's a very talented young player.
And I think you were saying, obviously the silver lining for the likes of Joey being out for so long is the amount of minutes that we'll get into some of our young guns, right? So you would include Braden Campbell. Would you include Roberts in that as well?
Oh, potentially, yeah. Like Dill Stevens, these young guys who are on the fringes who aren't really playing much at the moment. Sheldrick, who's coming back from injury now, because this is how football works. Like every senior star like Joe Kennedy that you lose is 100 minutes that someone else can play, because you're not going to drop Josh Kennedy if he's capable of playing at his best or close to his best football. But it means you haven't got that extra 100 minutes a week to play one of these kids, and now they do. So maybe we'll start to see some of them come through.
All right, mate, I've got a couple of questions here for you, and it's about the small forwards, and then it's about the rucks, our dual rucks. So Wicks, Bell, Ronk. Obviously, they've sort of been switching around. This past game, it was Wicks and Bell. A lot of hatred for Belly out there, and I don't really see it. I see him working really hard. I know he's not the best user of the ball, but you can't have 22 Braden Campbells or Errol Gouldens in the team, can you? So what's your take on this very intriguing, three-pronged competition for small forward?
Yeah, I think it's tough. First of all, with defensive small forwards, always looking in from the outside, it's very hard to know if they're doing what they should be doing, because we only see the players when they've got the footy. We don't know what they're being sent out to do by the coaches, and most of the other positions on the field, you can make, as an outsider, a fairly good assessment. Some of the defenders also can be hard, but mostly you can make a pretty good assessment of impact on a game based on what they do with the football. I think with these small forwards, it's far, far more difficult. So having said that, I don't think that Wicks and Bell are superstars. They're never going to be A-grade players. We shouldn't expect that from them. But are they the right ones to be in the team at the moment when we've got, other younger guys like a Sheldrick or someone who could be maybe playing a forward pocket role each week? It depends if we think we're trying to win a premiership right now or still developing a team. And if it's still developing a team, then, these guys, maybe they're not the ones. It's hard to, because two of them are from New South Wales. So that's part of it. I think it's always good to see New South Wales guys doing well in the team. But if I was going to pick my dream 22, they probably wouldn't be in there.
Yeah, look, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because, Ronk came back in and with that a couple of weeks ago, and with injection of really good run and tackle and a few goals, and then sort of he dropped off and then the others came back in. And so it's really sort of a bit of an in-out sort of situation at the moment. I think a lot of fans are looking at the numbers that Ryan Clark are putting up in the VFL and thinking, maybe he can go in as like a forward half tagger or even like an extra midfielder, obviously, because he'll run all day and he'll get his hands to the ball. But I've always, whenever he's gone back up in the AFL, I've thought that he just doesn't look right. And could someone like a Ryan Clark come in and play the role that Wicks, Bell and Ronk are doing? I don't know.
They probably could. I can't see why he couldn't. And this is the thing. This is why I'm loath to be critical of all three of these guys you mentioned, like Wicks, Bell and Ronk, just because it's a very difficult position. I know it's a horrible. I've played this position myself at times, and it's really, really hard, and it's totally thankless, and no one sees what you're doing, even if you're doing everything right. And then the moment you do something wrong, everyone jumps on your back. So I don't know. I don't think they're doing bad, but then who else do we have on the list that we'd rather see on the field? I'm not sure. And it comes back to, do you want to win games of footy or do you want to blood kids? And if I'm trying to win games of footy, then I've got two of those three playing. If I'm blooding kids, then, probably they're in the VFL.
I get the feeling that a certain I guess, school of Swans fans want to see like a minimum of 10 disposals and 2 goals from these guys every game. And I mean, if they're doing that every game, they're probably like the league's best small forward.
The best in history. You're the best small. I think Stephen Milne is like the best ever small forward, and he kicked barely 2 goals a game for his whole career. Something like that. Like, it's a tough job.
But up there, I think they're saying this year it's Charlie Cameron again, Zach Bailey's around in the mix. Shea Bolton, I think, is having a bit of a good season. Who else is up there? I'd say that's probably it at the moment. I mean, obviously, Papley was All-Australian last year as well. He'll find some form, continue to get his form going, and he'll be in the mix. But they're just, as you said, they're not at that level we shouldn't expect them to be, but we should be really stoked that they're playing the role that we can only guess that they're being sent out to do, which is just try your best to put pressure on the ball, and if the tackles stick, then that's great. But obviously don't miss tackles. But all those little pressure acts help. And I think we had some turnovers the first half, especially. A lot of the goals came from turnovers. So, but not in our forward half necessarily. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of these topics that comes up, I think, every week, especially because these 3 guys, not one of these, are really locking it down. I mean, obviously, Wicks and Bella, two are in the team at the moment, but Ronk, could come in and out. But all right, mate.
Just you said Clark too. Just quickly on Ryan Clark, I feel that. I mean, I tend to put a lot of faith in the coaching staff to know the list and know what they want out of the list. And I think that Ryan Clark's fit. He's not unfit, like he's not injured or anything. He's playing every week in the seconds. He comes on to the sub role occasionally. I feel that if they wanted Ryan Clark in the 22 every week, you'd be playing. And they've got Wicks and Bell in there, and sometimes Ronk. So they must, for whatever they want to get out of them, think that they're the best players.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned earlier that you think Bell would probably, his best footy would actually be in the midfield.
I like him as a midfielder, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him play plenty of VFL matches in the midfield, and he can rack it up as well. And he's sort of that sort of inside mid, sort of almost kind of a little bit like your row bottoms, that he's sort of tough and under. And, he's obviously got a pretty good aerobic capacity as well. But he's, down the pecking order and so has to perform this sort of pressure forward role. But, I'm sure he's not complaining. But, yeah, I kind of wish sometimes Swans fans would, get off his case a little bit. But, I mean, one Swans fan even said that he was the reason we lost the elimination final last year.
Oh, come on. What? Well, if you're listening, James Bell, there's plenty of love for you here. We like your footy. So.
Absolutely. You're an A-Bold favourite, mate. To say that is just stupid. I mean, we kicked 1-7 for the quarter. A lot of other Swans kicked behind that game. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Want everyone to be careful there, but all right, mate. Let's move on to the rucks. Obviously, we got Laddams in the trade period. Obviously, I'm just catching up because it's the first time we've done this show together this year. But we've got Tall Jesus in there. We've been running the 2 rucks for the second week in a row. Seemed to work well against the Bombers, but they were a rabble against the Blues. They had a younger ruck. Pitternet is out with a PCL, I think, and then they had Cripps, Silvani, and even Matthew Kennedy in the ruck. And overall, those 4 beat our 2 rucks. What do you think of Laddam's game against the Blues? He looked he was a little bit out at sea sometimes.
Too good.
Sure. Yeah, it wasn't his best. Had 2 good tackles, but other than that, at times he looked like he just was a bit slow or something. But would you persist with the 2 rucks?
I don't know. I mean, it worked against Essendon, but then it was not a competitive opposition really. Yeah, and that's being as honest as I can be. Both with our team and with the opposition. But I don't know. I like the setup where it was just one ruckman and like more of a forward who would give a chop out. But then, I mean, they've done this 2 weeks in a row, I guess, that they've done it. It's worked 1 week. It hasn't worked another week. I mean, how long do you play with it? That's a good question. I don't really have an answer.
I think that if we look at the Tigers, obviously Nankervis, there's another one that got away. And they've got Ivan Soldo, who 2 legitimate key rucks, or at least the stature of 2 key rucks on in the starting 22. So I think we'd probably have to roll it again. unless they think that maybe Amadi's due for an elevation. I mean, he kicked 4 goals. He's been playing pretty well. Sam Reid, I think, had 2 and a stack of marks, maybe some contested. But, yeah, I mean, Hayden McLean is down there as well. Stretch McAndrew's doing well, but he's certainly development. I don't know if he'll get any AFL games this year, but I'm hopeful that he'll crack on next year. But I think they'll probably persist for another week and then just see what happens. But, you know, it's ultimately up to the coaches, as we always say. But, yeah.
I wonder.
Any other...
because, if Richmond's got 2 genuine rocks, they've got Soldo and they've got Nankervis. I wonder if only playing Hickey and then, say, a McLean, because McLean can run. And McLean was pretty ordinary the couple of weeks before he got dropped. He wasn't playing very well. But he really, we know he can run. We've seen his GPS numbers and he can clock around 15 Ks in a game. So he really knows how to run. Maybe that's an advantage if they've got 2 sort of more lumbering, even though they're big and strong. If Hickey can handle most of it, maybe that's an advantage for us. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think McLean kicked 2 as well against Coburg there, that 30-point win that we got. But, I don't know if he's the one to come back in, because Amadi is obviously a very good forward rucker as well, and I think probably a better ruck, a pinch hitter ruck than McLean. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Stevo, where should Isaac Heaney be playing?
Within 90 metres of goal. All the time, please. Yeah. That's it. That's all I want. I want to see Isaac Heaney forward and centre.
So you're not happy with the midfield clock that he's been getting this year?
I think he's a good midfielder, but I think that there's a lot more good midfielders in the world than there is game-breaking half forwards, and that's where because it's like the classic robbing Peter to pay Paul. You take Heaney out of your forward line, then you lose an absolute match-winning player in front of 50, or so in front of centre. You put him in the midfield and he does something which, a lot of people can do, which is accumulate the ball. And he's a good user of the ball. He's a good mark and he plays well in the midfield. But if I could have him one place on the football field, it'd be in the forward line.
Yep. Well, on the topic of midfield guns and obviously Joey Kennedy out, there's a little bit of chit-chat over the last couple of weeks. Obviously Dusty coming to Sydney. Is he going to GWS? Is he going to the Swans? But then I think there was an article or an interview today. There's a couple of big GWS players that are potentially up for grabs, and that is Timmy Taranto and Jacob Hopper. I would go any one of those 3 really. If maybe not Dusty, less so Dusty. I've got eyes on Timmy Taranto. I know in the past you've really rated Jacob Hopper. I think he's out for another 6 weeks. I think he did his knee this year, didn't he?
Did he? Are they both off contract? Taranto and Hopper are both out of
My understanding is, they're coming up. They might be restricted free agents.
Can we have both of them? Both of them would be nice, actually. I think both of those 2 and the Swans look more like a premiership team.
Yeah, immediately. Imagine Mills, Taranto and Hopper just doing their thing in the middle. All of a sudden you've got, Rowie, Warner, Juzzy, Florent, all these really quite good serviceable midfielders that can then do these roles elsewhere, right? Back pocket, forward, Warner and Rowie could maybe go up front, and they could also play in the middle. I don't know, just if we can get both, how crazy would that be?
If we can afford them, can't Buddy sell one of his investment properties or something and bring him over for a year?
I wonder what, Buddy's Empire, I hope it runs deep. I think it probably would.
Surely it's enough for those 2 guys.
Surely. I'm just having a quick look here, mate, because it's an interesting concept where they're sitting.
There is the salary cap problem, I suppose. That's the ultimate.
Well, but you spoke about Buddy and Joey Kennedy's coming off as well, and Jacob Hopper is contracted until the end of 2023, and Taranto is this year at the end of this year. Yeah,
let's get him. Let's get Tim Taranto. He'd be fantastic. I'll happily get him. And maybe him and Hopper and some of their other guns, like Young Green, maybe they don't get along with James Hurd or whoever the new senior coach is going to be. And they like Sydney and they want to play for Horse.
Well, I think that's the thing. That's why a lot of people are saying Taranto, he's on the record as saying he prefers Sydney. I think maybe he's got a relationship. His missus is from Sydney, potentially. So like we should be looking at those types of players first and foremost. Someone who says they want to be in Sydney, and then a player of his caliber. Wow, would just be very exciting. And I mean, look, Sam Taylor would be really cool to get across. Actually like Sproul. I think he'd be very handy. That guy can kick 55 meters, and he's pretty handy in the ruck as well. Young Peatling, he's their academy. A lot of academy players there. I quite like the look of. Connor Stone as well, but they gave him an extra 2 years. This all of a sudden became an exercise in poaching giants, but it wasn't my intention. But yeah, look, I think if there can be if the conversation develops and there's some seriousness, and it comes down to Dusty versus Taranto, or Dusty versus Hopper, or Taranto versus Hopper, I'm thinking Timmy Taranto. But yeah, if we could get both of those guys, that would very quickly, as you said, put us back in the mix for going deep. So that's going to be one to watch. But
while we're at it, I like Paddy Cripps. I'd like Bontempelli. I'm trying to think of my other favourite players. They're probably my two favourite non-Swans players. I'll take either of them. Both would be better.
So okay, obviously, there's other 195 centimetre, 95 kilo players out there. They're not all midfielders. Well, what I'm trying to say is that Paddy Cripps is a fantastic player, but are we missing a midfielder of that size, Steve? A very tall mid. This is what I spoke about last year. I thought we were going to go a tall mid, but we ended up going Sheldrick, who's basically Parker, even Papley's size. And they're getting him as that inside bull. But I mean, 180 centimeters versus 195. I mean, Cripps is a pinch hitting ruck. Like, I mean, are we going for the right player? I mean, even Taranto and Hopper, they're more of that mill size, 188, 187. What do you think about like gigantic midfielders, 195 centimeter midfielders?
Oh, if you can get your hands on one, then they're great, but there's not that many of them. So it's a matter of being lucky enough to get one at the right time.
I think Charlie Constable was one we really, I think, should have had a look at. He's up at Gold Coast there now, and obviously couldn't get a game in at the Cats, but was killing it at VFL level. I don't know. He was a tall mid. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Umpires, inconsistent calls. Let's finish with that, and then we'll get on with looking ahead. So I won't spend too much time on it, but we did touch on it earlier, Steve. Have you got anything to add?
Oh, it was just a bit frustrating, really, wasn't it? I mean, there was a couple of particularly odd ones, and it's not a good thing when neutral fans after a game are talking about it, the umpiring, because fans are going to complain about the umpires often, even when they win. But when someone who's got no vested interest in either Carlton Football Club or the Swans is scratching their head afterwards thinking what was going on, then I think it's not good for football, really. And a lot of it comes down to how difficult the game is to umpire and play, but also a lot of tweaking and confusion with interpretation of rules that comes from the AFL. I'd hate to be an umpire in the AFL right now. I really would. I'm lucky in Europe when we play more simplified rules. So a lot of these interpretations of rules we just don't use in local competition here. Because it's too confusing. And so then our players watch the AFL on the weekend and they go, oh, why is that a free kick? Well, it is in that version of football, but we don't do that. So it's not. Because it'd be too confusing for the umpires and the players. So.
You could almost say, yeah, we don't know why that was a free kick.
Oh, I tell them all the time, I'm not, no idea. Absolutely no idea. It looked pretty bad. That's the one they love. For some reason, the Finns and that, like in Europe, European players, they love the response to a free kick. Why was that a free? Like, say, for a head high or like whatever. Oh, yeah, it just looked pretty bad. And that's our justification for the free kick.
It looked bad. Yeah,
it looked bad.
I mean, in that game, we've spoken about that Lions and Hawks game, the last game of the round. There were some absolute howlers in that as well. That one against Neil. I don't know. It was a free kick. It wasn't 50, but it was just like that kind of pushing and shoving. You see, it wasn't a football act, granted, but I don't think the AFL have come out and said, no football act accepted. This year, their big thing is dissent, right? Or stand, carry on from last year, stand the mark and dissent. But like, it's just, as you said, it's up to the individual interpretation. This is particularly for dissent of the umpire. And what their mood is on the day, where they're at in their career. There's so many different variables, and it just it just makes it frustrating. Like I mentioned this last year when we started the podcast. I was a rusted on rugby union fan because I played that because basically my body said there's no other sport you're good for. But obviously always supported the Swans because we're both born 82 when the Swans started in Sydney. But yeah, I think it's never been more difficult to follow the game in terms of the way that the game plays out. This is a game that was known for its simplicity comparatively against rugby union, right? Rugby union's got a law book. It's like, a couple of hundred pages long. But I mean, you look at the AFL one now and it's getting thicker and thicker. It's getting terse and unnecessarily confusing, I think. So how do you strip it back? How do you make it more simple? I mean, this is a conversation. This is a big conversation. I don't expect you to answer it in a minute, but where do you start, Stevo?
I would start again. Like at the end of the year, for a start, stop messing about and just go with what is happening now. Because if you try and change this stuff during a season, people just get more mixed up. But at the end of the year, all of these people in AFL House that are responsible for this sit down and wipe the entire slate clean and then say, okay, what are the key rules that are essential to our game of football? And then how can we make it so that we play the game within these rules? Throw out all the nonsense that they've got so far. And that'll be one part of it. And then the second part with professional umpires, look at top leagues around the world, like top professional. And the AFL ranks pretty high. I think it ranks in like 15 to 20 or so in terms of most commercially successful sporting leagues worldwide. But you look at all the other ones that are in that top tier, they all pay their officials full-time salaries. And this, for me, is such a no-brainer. But there seems to be massive resistance to it, both within the AFL and also from what I've sort of heard bits and pieces within a lot of the umpiring community also, because they don't want to go from being, quite well-paid full-time professionals to part-time umpires to then being moderately paid full-time umpires. So you'd have to get a totally new class of umpire that is willing to be a full-time umpire, but for less money than someone is currently getting doing, say, a corporate job plus umpiring on the weekends. So, yeah, simplify the whole thing. It's not a complicated sport. At least it doesnent have to be.
How much would you want to get in a salary to become a professional umpire if you're looking ahead and you're looking at your career options? I mean, if I were an 18-year-old and they said, you could earn $100,000 being an umpire, I'd probably do it, Stevo.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty good as an 18. I mean, that's as good as a rookie-listed 18-year-old in the AFL.
And you can do that till you're 45 years old. Like a lot of trades where after a certain period your body starts to pack up. You can do that for 25 years, 30 years as a professional umpire.
And let's say there's going to be KPIs and like your increases over the years, and like it's going to be linked to games umpired and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I think it's definitely there. There's definitely the money for it. I just think that if the problem is that there's the current umpires are all like mid-tier C, like managing their executive guys who do a bit of footy on the weekend, then obviously that trend has got to be pushed out, and then you just get this upcoming from the grassroots going, oh, that's a career choice. I could do this for 20 years and earn really good cash and buy a house. And I don't think it would be impossible. It obviously take a little bit to get the wave going, but I don't know. I'm with you, Stevo. So we got two things happening on the side. We probably haven't admitted this, but we've got a larger proposal about what the AFL should look like in general, involving teams and relocation, and then this new one, which is the rules that's come up on air. So
I just wipe the slate clean and start again. Man. If you can't explain a rule to people who are learning the game in Europe or kids who are learning to play footy when they're 8 years old, if you can't explain the rules to them, then maybe you shouldn't be trying to have them at the other levels of football.
Fair call, mate. And I think that's a good place to stop that conversation, because we could definitely spiral here, I think. But looking ahead, mate, let's very quickly look ahead. Where do we stand? What do we need? So the number, we're going to say it, 13 wins for the finals. That's the number that gets you into the finals. So where are we sitting?
Usually, yeah, that's guaranteed. Some years, last year, Essendon got in with 11, but that's not typical. Normally, it's either 12 and strong percentage or 13 to get you in. So let's say we need 7 more from the last 12. We've got to pull them from somewhere. We just dropped one of those 50-50 games. So that's one more to make up. And who we got next week? Richmond, another 50-50 game. Week after that, Melbourne probably lose. Then it's Dubai. Then it's Port, 50-50. St Kilda, probably 50-50. It's a tough month.
And I was thinking before the Blues game that, if we could win 2 of the next 5 of those games you just said, then that run home might be okay. But then we were looking at the run home before, and it's probably not going to be as easy as I first thought. We've got Essendon away, the Bulldogs at home, Freo away, Adelaide at home, and we're getting our booze ready for Jordan Dawson. GWS at home, North away, Collingwood home, St Kilda away. So obviously there's a couple of bottom 4 teams in there, but, they could pick up by then and nothing's granted. So it really is so important that we get at least one win in the next 4 games.
Yeah, so let's say those 4 you said. Essendon, Adelaide, Giants, North, we win all 4 of them. We still need to find 3 more wins out of the other games. That means that out of Richmond, Melbourne, Port, St Kilda, Bulldogs, Fremantle, Collingwood, St Kilda, need to win 3 of them. It's tough.
It's going to be very tough, I think.
Mm.
And I think we'll probably know how we're really, obviously I think the Blues game is that real first eye opener. Well, I think the Suns loss was the first eye opener, I think, because, to lose against the Lions, you can hold your head up. But then if you're losing against the Suns on your home deck, you go, oh, hang on, maybe we're not actually, in the top 4 at least. But then, to lose to the Blues the way we did, we came close, came home, couldn't get the job done. I don't know. The confidence is waning, isn't it? A little bit. But
and 6 of the next 7 was looking at this up until the Fremantle game. So 6 of the next 7 up until round 18, which is Fremantle, are all sort of 50-50 games or worse. I mean, one of them is Melbourne. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. But good news, you told me earlier, you and your brother will be all going well, in country and potentially available for some live Aussie rules if the AFL could just release some firm dates.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? If they could tell us when they're going to play these matches. Both me and my brother lives in Canada and I'm living in Finland, and neither of us have been to any footy for quite a while. We haven't been in Australia for quite a while. I mean, with all of the border closures and stuff, it's 2.5+ years for both of us. So we haven't been to any footy for ages. So we're hoping to get to the Crows game. We just got the date last week for the Crows game. So we're planning to get to that one at the SCG. But we still don't have the dates for the Giants and North Melbourne the week after. And it would be very nice to be able to plan around those with the dates in hand. My poor sister has all these activities that she wants to organise, and she's waiting for the football fixtures very patiently.
As is the way in sporting families.
So why can't they just let them out earlier? Why can't you tell us the whole season's dates at the start of the season, like other sporting leagues around the world do?
Well, I made the point to you off air that I wonder if they're just milking this whole coronavirus thing, and really it just suits them better to have this flexible schedule where they can put the blockbuster matches in the time slot, in the what are they called, the primetime slots, right? And much like probably the Swans and Carlton were, and maybe we've got another Friday night where against the Tigers at the SCG coming up this week, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Maybe that's why they're doing it. It's super annoying because I would rather just have it all done. And now that we're traveling again, the domestic travel is happening, international travel is happening as well. It'd be way easier to plan, wouldn't it?
Oh, for everything, everything in life, trying to organise just activities and stuff to know when the schedule's on. I mean, they're wondering why people aren't turning up to games. Maybe it's because it's hard to plan when you don't know till 5 weeks before.
Well, that and this descent rule is probably
that and some arm waving by the occasional player is
goodness,
crushing the AFL.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
It's nuts.
Well, hopefully, we can get you and Matt over and have a beer in the O'Reilly with the rabble, and I want you, if you're sitting nearby, I want you to say at least once a quarter, Jordan, you are not awesome.
Or Jordan Dawson.
Dawson, you are not awesome. Anyway, not his fault, I guess.
Yeah, if he kicks a goal to ice the game, I'll be far less sympathetic towards him, I think.
Well, I think if he just kicks any ball at any point, I'll be dirty. Anyway. All right, mate, let's do a quick preview against the Tigers. So Richmond are sitting 8th on 6 and 4, 120%. Same as us. We are 7th with 6 wins, 4 losses, same percentage, 120. Their 6 wins have been GWS, Western Bulldogs, West Coast Eagles, Collingwood, Hawthorn, and Essendon. Their 4 losses have been Carlton, St Kilda, Adelaide, and Melbourne. So I don't know really what to make of that. From their last 5, they're 4 wins, 1 loss. That 1 loss was against Melbourne. So they're on a streak. They're, I think, a 3 or 4 game winning streak. I don't know, mate. We've won 2 from our last 5 against them. Most recent was that massive game at the MCG last year, and I think you might even talk about that in a moment. What do you think, mate? What are your thoughts on this? Obviously, you mentioned earlier Tom Lynch is out, Kane Lambert is out, but they're coming into some form, and I don't know, maybe they're reprising the dynasty, mate.
Oh, they're certainly playing with a bit of energy, and I think that if the Swans don't give 4 good quarters, they're probably not going to win the game. They really can't afford to keep doing this. Richmond are a good team. They won the premiership like 2 years ago. They haven't dropped off that dramatically. Most of their side is still fairly much there, like that core. They had a bad year last year, and they're bouncing back. And I think I'm very close to tipping Richmond.
Yeah. It's going to be. I mean, look, all confidence is out the window now. It's been steadily dropping since the Gold Coast loss. Obviously, it was good on paper, that big win against the Bombers felt good, but when you look at how the Bombers are running and what they dished up in that game, really sort of left more questions than anything. Why didn't we beat them by more? And all that sort of stuff. But and then the Blues game, obviously, didn't do ourselves any favors there. Like as you said. Didn't play 4 quarters. Is it that hard to play 4 quarters? I mean, you played heaps of footy. I played 1 game with you, twisted my ankle, played half a game of AFL 9s, did my hammy. Is it as hard to play 4 quarters as everyone makes out?
I think it is, because it's mental. Because if it was just about physical ability and football ability, then the best team would win all the time. So it's about the energy and the mental side of the game, and especially AFL level. I mean, I've never played at that high level, so I can only imagine. But to stay mentally on, to be able to win 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, and another 30 minutes, it's tough, I think.
Yeah, so it's a mental thing. All right.
Yeah, most of sport is mental. Like seriously, it's all mental.
And it is a long game.
Any sport. Yeah, like you said, it's long, so there's ebbs and flows always.
I think that was one of the points, going back to the review part of the podcast, but Horse said, we didn't stem the flow quickly enough, so like almost responding, like acknowledging that you're on the back foot within a quarter, but then having the presence of mind to go, okay, this is what we need to do to stop that and just sort of, catch our breath. And obviously didn't do any of that in that second quarter. But we better move on to the one last thing, mate. One last thing, Tigers at the SCG, early thoughts. I think you mentioned you're tipping the Tigers.
I am,
but
sorry?
You got a best-worst memory against Richmond?
And I feel bad tipping the Tigers, but I am tipping the Tigers. I remember a whole bunch of games in like the 2000s where there was heaps of like 1-point margins and six point margins and stuff against the Tigers. So there was some good memories in there, even though I can't isolate them. We haven't had much of a rivalry with Richmond, really, have we?
No, not really. I think you were saying, look, I don't know.
Our periods of dominance haven't really overlapped, because their period of dominance, we weren't really quite up there. We were sort of thereabouts and then dropping off. And in our period of dominance, Richmond was a laughingstock, honestly. So it hasn't really been a side that's been I want to beat the Tigers. But no, that's it. Nothing good.
Other than probably wanting to knock off the and I think you was going to say that the fact that game last year, that big win against the MCG, I think you were saying, at that time we were a bottom 4 team and they were a reigning premiers, so it meant a lot, right? at that time.
Yeah, and I think we forget this quickly because we're now 7th versus 8th. But yeah, a year ago when we played, we were a team that had been getting belted around, and the year before that, in 2020, had been played in what Damien Hardwick thought was the worst game of football he'd ever been involved in. I got the score written here. It was, they beat us 4 goals 10-34 to 3 goals 8-26, and fair, that was shorter quarters because it was that really heavily COVID affected year, but that's terrible. Like, that's so awful. That's a combined total of 60 points for a game of AFL football. And then we came out the year after and flogged them on their own field. So
Sammy Wicks kicked 3, he got about 125 in fantasy that game. That was maybe even peak Wicks, but hopefully he can get to that point again because he was just on fire that game. But yeah, I think it was in the pouring rain, that one, wasn't it, up in Brisbane? And it was just a really the low scoring game. I remember that. Yeah, it was just he was saying, Sydney with the defensive tactics. It's like, well, mate, you guys weren't much better. But anyway, dimmer.
No, what are you going to do? I think Horse said something like that after the game to him. He's like, if you had the list of kids that I've got to play, what exactly would your tactics have been to not lose by 200 points? Like, come on.
That's it. Horse has always got a very good comeback, hasn't he? Cool, calm, collected.
Yeah, words to the effect. I'm not saying that's exactly what he said. I might have remembered wrong. But
no worries, mate. It's not like this is recorded for all to hear for us to check the quote there, but it's all good, mate. All right. Well, if you've got nothing else, Stevo, I'd like to say thank you for hopping on. It's been good doing the show with you. It's bringing back fond memories from our venture into the podcasting world last year. But let me know when you're free, mate. It'd be good to do a bit of a strategy session, maybe a list session in the buy. You're out here soon, so let's catch up for a bit.
Yeah, end of July. In the summer, like the summer here, like northern summer, I'm much more around. Yeah, the challenge with so far this year has just been the time zone difference, because recording now that everyone's back to work face-to-face, at least in Finland, everything's happening face-to-face again. And so trying to get free time in the middle of the afternoon when I should be working to record a podcast has been impossible. But today, luckily, I had a free afternoon, so it worked out well.
Perfect. Yeah, I recorded on the road from Perth last week because I was over there for work. So, yeah, it's certainly going to be more and more challenging going forward. But anyway, appreciate it nonetheless, mate. And I'm sure our listeners do too. Yeah. All right, mate. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. So on behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone for listening in. Keep an eye out for our team's reaction announcement on Thursday night on our socials, and make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for other updates, videos, and announcements. Until then, up the Bloods, and can you Swannies?